Okay, guys, thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of my podcast, Mono e Mono. My name is Shane Monahan, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Peyton, excuse me, and Ciaran Sims of KineMo. And
KineMo. KineMo.
KineMo, exactly.
KineMo.
There you go.
Yeah.
Great start. So that's the same issue I have with mine, Limor or Limor. So
Yeah. Yeah.
KineMo,
It's called
KineMo.
KineMo because it's kinematics of motion.
And you've beaten me to the punch. I was going to ask you, where does the name come from? And if you want to give a quick explainer about what the business is and what it is you do.
Sure.
So, who wants to kick off there?
I'll kick off because I have a couple of buzzwords and then when it gets into the detail, I don't know what I'm talking about. I hand that over to Ciaran. So KineMo is a spin out from Trinity College in Dublin. It was a research project in Trinity for a couple of years. Originally, our name was Video Force. We were looking at video and analyzing the movement of athletes, um, movement and force of athletes in dynamic scenarios. And where all of that came from was a partnership that Trinity College had with or has with Leinster Rugby. And Ciaran was part of that within Trinity. Um, and originally looking at video in head injury assessment and very quickly identified that although that is a big problem, what is also a big problem for sports organizations is accurately tracking and quantifying the kinematics, the movement competency of athletes, particularly large volumes of athletes, in something that's pretty much done by observation at the moment because there wasn't in place a tool that would allow you to do it accurately, comparable to say a biomechanics lab, but then also allow you to do it at scale, allow you to do it kind of dynamically in busy environments and so on. So that's where KineMo came from. That's where it started.
And movement capacity for people who don't know, could you give a quick explainer about what that means?
It's essentially joint angles. So, I mean, here's a something I prepared earlier, right? So, if
Oh,
you've got
hey,
somebody
Blue
sitting
Peter.
on, yeah, somebody sitting on a bicycle, you might want to know what's their elbow angle. In that case, the elbow angle is around a bit less than 90 degrees, a bit more than 90 degrees. That's kind of close to 90 degrees like that. And when somebody is squatting, you'd want to know their knee flexion angles, you'd want to know their trunk angles, you'd want to know various different measures. And we do that, we quantify that directly from a video. So we just
And
record somebody doing an exercise and we extract from that video key points of the body, calculate the angles, and present it back to the coach or the physio.
okay, so you're bringing technology into the process where we need to give a shout out actually to Gareth Farrell, the link man in Leinster Rugby, who's
Indeed.
formerly getting me to do exactly that, squat and looking at me and my movement patterns in Leinster back in the day. And he has involvement. We'll touch on that in a minute. So the likes of Gareth there would be doing that in the past purely by guess and by eye,
Yes, that's right.
and you're taken to another level with technology.
Yeah, with the exception of a very small number of cases where they would send an athlete off to an expensive lab, they judge almost everything by eye. And then there's a
Okay.
problem where your by eye judgment would be different to somebody else's. And how do you remember? You can't quantify an angle accurately. And how do you remember what somebody did last week? Um,
Yes.
so there's a clear need there to have some kind of system in place.
Y-
The analogy that, or the example that Gareth would often give is that there are a lot of tools in the market that allow you to track and quantify other metrics, force, the GPS trackers and so on. But they don't tell you how the individual was moving as they were completing that movement or that exercise. And that was the gap. That was the element that predominantly was done by observation. And that's the gap that KineMo now fills because we can track those movements accurately and do it over time.
And uh, people in the space like a Garrett and other physios would identify that. But for Kinemo, like who was the person that said, right, I'm going to solve this problem with technology? Was that you, Ciaran, or yourself, Leo? Or
Well, it
Right.
was a group of us, but
Right.
it was a journey. Um, we started with the
with Leinster in around 2014, trying to track athletes on the pitch for head injuries. And we were looking at upper body tackles, lower body tackles, what gives you a higher likelihood of a head impact. And we were literally looking at frame by frame in a video, going, God, this is taking forever. There must be some way to automate this. And at the same time, there was a rapid increase in technology, computer vision technology, to track information out of videos automatically. Helped with these convolutional neural networks and transformer models that were used to do what's called human pose estimation. And we started trying to do this. It doesn't work very well on a pitch. And then we started trying to say, okay, well, if we take a step back and we just try to do it where people doing exercise movements, which are more controlled, maybe we can make some progress there. And, we had a lot of input from Alyosha Smolich, who's a computer science from Trinity, and we had input from Richard Blythman, who had a strong background in machine learning. And we built a team around that.
Okay, fantastic. A group effort. So would you be able to give me an individual, at the micro level case study of a rugby player in Leinster? How would this benefit that individual player?
Sure. So lots of players in rugby players would have lower limb injuries, ACL injuries, or hamstring injuries. And during the rehab process, the goal is to try to get that player moving the way they were moving before they were injured. Until now, there's been no way of knowing how does the person move before they're injured, apart from the person saying, I think I'm there or thereabouts. And in fact, we spoke to one international player who said, if I knew confidently that I was moving as I was before I was injured, that would make a difference to me psychologically. So now with KineMo, we have a baseline measurement of how that person does their squats before they ever got injured. Then they get injured and they have a movement deficit. And the coach and the physio can track that progression over time as the person incrementally returns back to what they had before.
Okay, excellent. So comparatively would be similar to a concussion. So how were you before you were concussed on your baseline versus after, and then when you're back to normal, you can measure the two together.
Yes, and a big problem or challenge is that everybody is different.
Yeah.
So you can't just kind of go, the literature says you should be able to do this, because there are some very high ranking rugby players who don't necessarily move the way a textbook would say this is how you move. But they've made it to the
Yeah.
top anyway. So if you
Yeah.
know how they move as their baseline, you can use that as your frame of reference.
Yeah. And on that point, I need to give a big shout out to Garrett again because he was one of the first physios I encountered who kind of took that philosophy of it's not blank slate, not everyone is not the same. And I had big issues for many years with hamstring injuries. And I was being told to do one thing, which was the general way of dealing with it. And then Garrett just so happened, I think in his thesis in university, did the exact thing with me, which was a hyperlordosis for people, over curvature of the lower spine, which was causing the issues. And he said, no, you need to do it this way. So that individual approach
Yeah.
is, oh, it's essential, especially at that high level of sport.
Yes.
So, no, that's awesome. And okay, so I want to hit all angles of the journey, as it were. So that's kind of the idea, the product and the problem, the solution, how it's used, and you have to make a business to make this thing, grow and scale. So I don't know who will I start. I'll start with you, Leo.
Yeah,
What's your background? Where do you come from, and how do you get involved in a
sure.
business like this?
So originally my background is accountancy. So worked as an accountant for a number of years, then worked as an IT consultant in working with ERP platforms and so on for several years. And then around mid 2000s, I got involved with a sports tech startup out of Surrey in the UK. And with them, I had the opportunity to work with national governing bodies in sport all over the world. Worked a lot with FIFA and UEFA and Wimbledon and these kinds of sports organizations. So very interesting journey for several years. And then more recently back here in Ireland, stayed involved in sports tech a little bit, was involved with the virtual cycling startup for a while, and And then Enterprise Ireland and Trinity College asked me would I look at a couple of their research projects from a feasibility perspective to see, first of all, if we could get commercialization funding from Enterprise Ireland and from KineMo's perspective, a big shout out to Enterprise Ireland. They're a huge support for us and have been since we started. So I did that feasibility study for KineMo and then joined the team as one of the co-founders as well.
Okay, fantastic. And Ciaran, you're part of that process from the Trinity angle, is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm a biomechanical engineer. I've been at Trinity since 2001 as a lecturer. Spent most of my time researching injury biomechanics. And then, as I already described, through that process with Leinster, we started becoming more involved in just tracking movement mechanics. And yeah, the journey of trying to create a business has been really fascinating to me because I've not done it before. I've been involved in a number of projects where we've done something specific for a business, but the excitement of realizing there's a need and that you have the means to potentially fill that need, but then that you're working within constraints of funding and timelines and everything else. It's really a roller coaster experience, and you know the 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 need to have a CEO like Leo, to have a technical lead like Clara, to have a CTO like David, that's Clara Mercadal and David Jones, and others on the team. Like it really takes a lot of people to make it happen, and that's there's challenges, of course, of a big team as well, but there's also the excitement of a group of people working towards a common goal.
Yeah, most definitely. And how many people are in the organization currently?
Depends a bit how you count it, but including
Yeah.
advisors, it's probably around 10 of us.
Okay. Okay. And then of course the people you're working alongside, I'm sure, in Leinster and the IRFU. Leo, I saw a post on your LinkedIn when I was doing some research. You mentioned Enterprise Ireland and there's a partnership with tech companies and the IRFU. Do you
Correct.
want to give us a
Yes.
little insight into that?
Yeah, sure. That's been a fantastic opportunity for us. So, the RFU have an innovation partnership with Enterprise Ireland, and they work with a few sports tech startups each year through that program. And we were very lucky to be selected in September. And as you said, we were in the match program for the French game. Where they were kind of highlighting some of the companies they've been working with. So that's been a huge opportunity for us. And, we've had the opportunity to track a number of teams and players and some really interesting insights, very similar to some of the work that we've been doing with Leinster as well in the rugby sphere.
Okay, awesome. And something I get asked a lot, from the startup perspective, people who want to start a business and people who are looking to raise capital and grow their network. How was that process for you guys? To get a business, obviously there's support from the government and pitching your idea is one thing that's difficult in itself. But then have you gone down the route of pitching to high net worth investors or VCs and that journey? If you had, it would be great to
Yeah.
hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite early in some of that journey, but as I said, we've been incredibly lucky through the research piece with Enterprise Ireland. They supported our research through two commercialization funds, which was fantastic. They also then supported us when we spun out in April from the university, April last year, and they supported us with the PSSF, so the pre-seed funding. And then more recently, we've been very lucky to have a few athletes that obviously really like what we're doing, really get what we're doing, and are looking to invest in our business again alongside Enterprise Ireland. So that journey has been the investment journey is long, and you meet a lot of people before you find the right match, shall we say. But it's amazing for us, not just in terms of the investment they're going to make, but also the fact that they're athletes, they're elite athletes, they're in
Yeah.
their space, that they understand what we're doing. And in parallel with all of that, we've had the opportunity to meet with quite a few of the VCs and the investment houses in Ireland, and that's been I think what's been valuable in that is that we meet them regularly, so we understand what it is that they're looking for from us for a future round. So they're interested in what we're going to do in our next round, and it's been a process of working with them to say, well, we would love for you to do X, Y, and Z for a round that you've got coming out, hopefully early next year.
And how many pitch decks have you made at this stage? Edits. A
I'd
few.
say I'd say comfortably I've got about 6 or 7 gig of pitch decks, all slightly different. But yeah, I mean it's just if you look back now at maybe the first few that we did, we probably wouldn't invest in ourselves. You learn very quickly and it
Mm.
changes quite a lot over the months.
It really is a journey like that. Telling a story is so important, and it's very hard at the beginning because you're telling a dream. As time
Mm.
goes on, you're telling something that's actually happening. So, it's a lot easier for us now when we're presenting because we can say we have this client or we're trialing this here, whereas, 2 or 3 years ago we had none of that. But we still have to pitch.
Yeah,
I
So,
think, I
the
think
vision.
you
yeah,
often, particularly if you're very passionate about what you're doing, you often spend a lot of time talking about how wonderful it is and how great the technology is. And of course, from an investor's perspective, what they're interested in is what is the market and what market are you focused on and how quickly can you address that. So you have to kind of sit in their shoes, I guess, a little bit rather than get too excited about the wonderful technology you've built.
Yeah, what's the return on my investment? And when do I get it back?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, just give us the money and stop asking questions. We'll make
Yeah,
it
yeah,
happen.
that'll be fine.
And on that, like, what is your ultimate vision, or if you're allowed or open to say, like your business structure? How does it work from that perspective? Because you could have an investor listen to this saying, "Geez, that's interesting," you know?
Yes, so I suppose from a market perspective or an approach to the market, um, that hasn't really changed for us for quite a while. That was one thing that we set out early and we've sort of stuck to it, and that is that there's two aspects to our platform. The one part of it is, and this has come from the organizations, the sports organizations, the healthcare organizations, the gym chains, the physio sports clinics, and so on. They all said, if you're going to provide something that's comparable to a biomechanics lab or sending somebody to a lab like that to get their movement quantified, then you need to be accurate and you need to be consistent. Consistency is nearly more important than accuracy in a way, but that's going to be really, really important. And then the other half of it is that if you're going to do this in a way that you can really scale, and I mean scale in terms of the numbers of individuals you can track and how quickly you can do it, then it needs to be something that you can just pick up your mobile phone and record somebody, and that's all they need to worry about. You don't need to worry about wearables or depth sensors or multiple cameras being calibrated or anything like that. So that was kind of the ask. And so our approach then was, okay, well, let's do that. And let's try and do that so it's good enough for a Gareth Farrell to make a decision on an elite athlete. And if we can achieve that, if we can achieve outputs that he can make decisions on, or people, physios or coaches in any of those elite environments, then that same platform can be applied to, much broader use cases and much broader markets. And that's kind of what we've stuck to as we kind of moved through the process.
Very interesting. So in time, you could see it evolving to branch out from elite athletes to, people who are ordinary people in the gym using it
yes,
potentially.
Absolutely. And in fact, what happened really quickly after we spun out in April, we were approached by an organization in the UAE where it's a really innovative, very, very interesting organization that was looking at tracking across the population. So not just elite athletes or weekend warriors, but sedentary populations as well. And part of the process of assessing people across DNA tests and strength tests and all of these areas was to understand how they move. And so they approached us and in fact they became our first commercial client. So outside of elite sports, but still an incredibly interesting opportunity for us, and a really interesting journey that they're going on as well, that we've been part of, which has been great.
Just to say as well that within the elite sporting organizations, a major use case is the developing athletes within those organizations. So we talked earlier about a rehab use case, but actually screening individual larger cohorts of athletes and picking out those who struggle with their movements across basic exercises. That's been actually the biggest part of the trialing that we're doing.
Okay, fantastic. And just trying to understand that. So the movement, the squat example is range of movement, and would it also indicate from that like the pressures on joints and hips and all that aspect, muscles and tendons and all that? Is that
Yes,
incorporated into it also?
we don't measure those things, but you can infer those aspects directly from the movement. So, when somebody does a squat, what you want them is to have their weight in their heels. You want them to keep their trunk upright. We've got a lot of people, can't demonstrate it too well here, but when they reach about as far as they can squat with their knee, they then tilt their torso forward. That's a classic challenge that happens. Or when people are doing lunges, that they don't keep their trunk upright, or that their knees come in. And all of these movement deficits can be picked up directly out of the video. So normally when we've been doing these trials with cohorts, we're looking at a small number of exercises: squats, lunges, counter movement jumps, single leg squats. And what's been fascinating for me is that almost across a range of different sports, rowing, cricket, rugby, soccer, they're all the same exercises.
Yeah.
You don't,
Yeah.
they might look for something slightly different. And say with the rugby ones, they might put a weight on the squat, but they're still looking for the same basic movements.
And
I think as well, as you said, we're looking at make it good enough for elite athletes, but actually the duty of care is much greater the lower down you go
yeah,
through academies and down to youth levels and so on. That's where you can influence how people move. And if you're moving poorly and you get to the point where you're adding significant external load, the potential for injury is greater and so on. So for us, there is a greater duty of care when you get down to younger athletes, and being able to monitor them with a tool like KineMo at that age at younger ages is important.
yeah, most definitely. And just on the product itself with the video aspect of it, currently you're videoing people doing static position, squatting, and all that aspect of it as well. Does it incorporate into footage of live game footage also at high speeds?
Not yet. The next step from the static exercises, if you want to call them that, although a jump is hardly a static exercise,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the next step up from that is running and cutting maneuvers.
Mm,
We've started training our models to reconstruct those movements as well. These are clearly an important aspect of a lower limb injury recovery. And then from there, we're going to look at tracking what happens on a pitch. But it is quite literally a crowded field right here.
yeah,
Like our USP is a single camera, and it works so well because it's so quick, and it works well because we train it to learn specific scenarios. And then you're to get that to work on a sports pitch. Where is that camera going to be? Who's going to be occluding the player that you're interested in? It's fraught with technical challenges. So while we think we can make a contribution, especially up to the point of a tackle in rugby, which is in some respects the most important part, because by the time you've got to making contact, you've assumed whatever shape you're going to have. But the tackle itself is a really difficult thing to track with a single camera.
yeah.
I think just to add
Sorry,
to
go
that,
on.
one of the things that has been interesting is in the context of athletic development, looking at how an athlete is executing a particular movement. Again, we just keep using the example of a squat, but let's use that. So how are you executing a squat? And then although we don't video it and analyze it, you could look at that in the context then of how they're executing a movement on the field. So if that is a front row athlete in a scrum, for example, well, how are they moving in that environment, and how does that translate to how well they're moving in this gym environment, and what do we need to focus on? And I don't want to keep concentrating on rugby either. I mean, we've got similar examples in cricket and
Yeah,
other areas.
we've just done a provisional study in GAA. It's quite interesting. So there's lots of lower limb injuries from single leg landings. So players jump in the
Yeah.
air, compete for the ball, and then they land on one leg. And if they're jumping off both legs, and we're seeing that they're jumping up to half a meter, like their center of gravity is half a meter above the ground at the peak of the jump, which means they then have to land from that height. And there's no S&C exercise program that is training anyone for that.
Yeah.
So it, to kind of chime in what Leo's saying about whether the deadlift matches what happens in the scrum, similarly for GAA is like, is the counter movement jump matching the jump that's experienced on the pitch? So I think we can make a contribution in that area as well.
Yeah. The influence of the type of training and
Yeah,
weights and
yeah,
functional movements of people. I'm thinking of uh, an area which potentially this could be huge in a positive way that applies to all most sports anyway that you're talking about is when we used to do our sprint training. So the side view, you'd often see the Olympics of the sprinter. The camera follows them, and you can see the full functional movement of the arms, the
yeah,
high knees, the
yeah,
legs, the all that aspect
yeah.
of it. I think your product potentially could be absolutely fantastic in that scenario.
Yes, yes, that's
Um,
what we're working towards with that running and
yeah,
cutting data collection.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's really cool. And speaking about the technology, and um, I'm in that space as well, so I understand how frustrating it can be when people ask you, "Have you got this feature yet?" So I know exactly where you're coming from, and if there's anyone listening who has 100 million that wants to invest in KineMo, guys, so they can get these features built a lot quicker, I'm sure they'll talk to you. Um, but the ability to achieve those things quicker using the two big letters, the A and the I, AI technology. Um, how much do you think that's going to impact what you're doing?
I mean, I can jump in and like Ciaran talk in detail, but it's a significant part of what we're doing. From an underlying technology or platform perspective, how we take 2D key points from just standard video and lift it into a 3D render of an individual and all of the metrics that sit behind it and all of that. There's a lot of AI included in that. How we A lot of what we've been doing very recently is looking at how do we understand when a movement is starting, when a movement is finishing? How do we clean up a lot of that data, and how do we automate the process of doing that? But also a really interesting area for us at the moment, just to use another buzzword, from an agentic perspective, is looking at the outputs that we're producing and how you interpret that and present that and codify how you're doing it compared to some of the data sets we've got sitting behind it, some of the information that we've gathered previously. There's a lot of interesting stuff that we've been working on there that I think will add a lot of value and automate a lot of the process for physios and coaches and others that will be using the platform.
what what I agree with all with that. It's kind of pervades everything that we have, and as our user community grows, we'll be able to assess an individual against their equivalent cohort.
Hmm.
So on the one hand, everyone is an individual and you need to know their baseline, but it's also useful to know that this is a 15-year-old girl GA player and not a 25-year-old male rugby player.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
going to have different movement norms um, that are no less important for each cohort. And as our data grows, we'll be able to learn from that. And what I think is important is that we're not trying to replace physios and coaches. We're trying to enable physios and coaches to make decisions that they can then
Mhm.
stand over. And as part of that, we have to find ways to give them automated reports that they can action in a quick, meaningful way.
Yeah.
That will
One.
be AI driven as well.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference for efficiency and making the right decisions for those physios, but the player welfare as well. Like the introduction it's a good number of years now when they first started introducing the GPS tracking distances instead of guesswork of how many times you run around. They know exactly and the strain, and you're getting into your red markers. You need to rest now because you're going to pull a hamstring or a calf
Yes.
muscle or whatever.
Yeah.
So you guys are just giving that extra bit of data and information for the protection of the players, which is a fantastic thing to do.
I
And
think you're spot on. You know, that is an area that more and more over the last couple of months has been something that's come up. You know, building protocols around how we track movement in the same way that we do with some of those other metrics. And we've seen that across a number of the sports that we've been dealing with. So again, that for us is a really interesting area because you're talking about then looking at how do I apply that to younger athletes as well. So large cohorts of younger athletes that you're maybe screening periodically and so on. So absolutely.
yeah, it's the efficiency of movement. And coming back to that sprinting one, um, like you look at the efficiency of an Usain Bolt and his angle of his knees and legs and arms versus someone else who is they're throwing the legs trying to go faster, but they're putting more strain on and they're not getting there any
Mhm.
quicker than he is. And all those lessons and that data to be able to apply that to younger people and show them and say, listen, look
Yeah.
at yourself and see that data. And if you move in this way, just percentage or not, the angle is slightly changed, it would make a massive impact to you in a positive way.
And
Uh,
also the ability then to
yeah.
Yeah,
gamify good movement is a really interesting area for us. And you know, I think lots of opportunity for us to do that.
Our dream would be to have athletes not only trying to uh, minimize their time in a sprint or maximize the weight that they lifted, but to optimize their movement in a
yes,
way that they're going to boast to their near, like to have a leaderboard and go, I did that best. Now I know that there's challenges because people have individual mechanics, but that to harness the naturally competitive nature of
mm.
athletes towards moving better, that would
Oh yeah,
really that would
I,
really
I can see it straight away. Like, every club I was in, you'd have the max bench, max squat,
yeah
max leaderboard of where you were, your gaugers and your markers, because as you said, it's so competitive. Everyone is trying to get an edge, right? I mightn't be the best at passing or kicking the ball, but I'm the best at, you know,
yeah.
benching or squatting. And that does have an effect, to be an elite in anything. And I'm just thinking as well, the more I'm listening to you, it's very interesting. And the avenues potentially you could go with this form of data and another emerging market, I'm sure you guys have already thought of this or thinking of it, is the potential for robotics. Because you look at Elon Musk, they just launched those robots and they're getting more and more realistic and more human-like. And I'm sure there may be an application for you guys in what you're doing to apply to robots too.
Yes, for sure. It's not something that we've put too much of our current thoughts into, but I mean the interaction of robots with computer vision is massive. And yes, there will be.
So if you're planning to go down that route, I'll come in and join the team and we'll make an Irish robot company.
We,
Yeah,
we, we have in Trinity a spin out of Cara Robotics from Conor McGinn.
Really?
I don't know if you know them.
No, no.
He's a direct colleague of mine, so you'll have to.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Just as long as they don't become super intelligent and try and take over like the Terminators, we'll be all right.
yeah.
It was only to help squats, not take over the world.
You
Relax, lads.
misunderstood the brief. Yeah.
So yeah, so ultimately, guys, that was a great introduction. Really, really interesting. What is what's the goal now in the next, let's say, give you 2 years? Where would you like to be in 2 years' time?
I'll let Ciaran go first from a
I
technology perspective, and I'll give you a
I'd like us to be um, used in as many clubs and clinics around the country and across Europe and the world to track how people execute basic movements. Pick out people, allow physios and coaches pick out those people who are struggling and use KineMo as part of that process to improve their movements, whether it's at an athlete development or an injury return application. I'd like us to be able to extend it from the existing features that deals with the exercises, static exercises, and move it towards running and cutting and dynamic movements.
Very cool.
So from my perspective, as I said, we only spun out in April, and I think it's fair to say we've been, really surprised pleasantly, I guess, with the amount of organizations that have even contacted us rather than us even reaching out to them. So that goal of ours to work with elite sports, it's been fantastic. Obviously here in Ireland with the organizations we mentioned, Premier League, Serie A, national governing bodies in cricket, rowing athletes. It's been
Yeah.
amazing. So we've got another big one coming out, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I won't spoil it. I'll do that separately. But again, it's elite occupational athletes, so not kind of sporting athletes. But it's been amazing that they've seen the value in the accuracy we can achieve. So I think we've made huge progress in that. But for me, the ability then to kind of take that and apply it to, hundreds or thousands of individuals, at lower levels in sport, so in academy or grassroots, where, as I said earlier, there is a great duty of care. The use cases for that in clinics and in healthcare and in kind of holistic healthcare, I think is a market that we're really interested in expanding, having had a few again approach us already. And as you said, I think earlier on, just more of a consumer market in terms of gyms and that space, again, is this huge opportunity there. And sitting behind that, even the insurance industry, there's been a lot of interest in that. So I think we're very focused on these layers at the moment and how we extend down, but there's massive use cases in other markets as well. And we'd hope in if we can keep the cadence that we've achieved in our first, whatever it is, 12 months almost now, if we can keep that going for the next 2 years, then hopefully we make inroads in some of those areas for sure.
Yeah, and that's certainly something as a founder, especially of a startup with such an exciting product that adds such value is trying to do too many things at once.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
famous trying to boil the ocean
Mhm.
scenario can hinder you. But yeah, do the small things in the niche areas correctly, and the rest will come.
Yeah.
Before we finish up, if there is a business owner or an entrepreneur listening to this, is there any advice you could give them if they had a bit business similar to yourself? Doesn't have to be in sports tech, but anything like that, that from your experience that you have found to be very useful or a lesson you've learned along the way.
Uh, Probably a lot of lessons. I think, as I said earlier, I think certainly Enterprise Ireland is a huge resource here in Ireland. That's something that I would definitely try and wrap your arms around. Again, a shout out to Further for us. They've been extremely helpful to us on our journey in terms of guiding us with mentorship and so on. I think those areas have been incredibly helpful for us, certainly.
Okay.
I think for me, probably the biggest lesson is you can't control the future, so you just have to keep pushing forward, hoping that things will work out, and also that you have to keep talking to people. If you can't say, "Oh, it's not good enough to put in the hands of people," you have to get them to try it
Yeah.
and deal with the problems, because otherwise you'll never get there. And you have to obviously find some balance between over promising.
Yeah.
You know,
Very important, yeah,
uh,
which can be difficult. So
yeah,
network is key, Leo.
Yeah.
Having a strong network around you, and then as much feedback as you can possibly get, good and bad, because it's
yes,
the only way
Yeah.
you'll improve.
Yeah. I think, we don't want to build a product that myself and Ciaran and our team design, and we need to build a product that, and we're lucky to have a brilliant advisory team with people like Gareth Farrell and Lara Coyne and Des Ryan and Alyosha Smolich and all of these who are experts in their field, and they tell us what physios or coaches or youth athletic development coaches need. So I think for us that's really important, and we've been very lucky to have a really broad network of those, not just on our advisory team, but outside of that. And I think we're also, I suppose, very lucky in that sport is maybe slightly different to a lot of other industries in that
Yeah.
there is a lot of collaboration. There is a lot of across sport coaches and physios want to raise the bar in a lot of areas, and they've all got their own secret sauce, but they want to raise the bar in terms of how do we look after athletes a little bit better and so on. So there's been a huge collaboration there that has helped us to work out what it is that we need to do with the product for all of them.
Fantastic. So before we wrap up, guys, if Elon Musk is listening to this and is interested in partnering with you guys for robots, or if there's an owner of a sports team or a physio and they want to get in touch and connect and learn more and potentially use your technology, what is the best way to do that?
I mean, certainly jump on LinkedIn and drop me a note, or onto our KineMo page on LinkedIn, or go to our website, kine-mo.com, and drop us a note. We'd love to chat to you. And if Elon's keen, maybe on the SpaceX side, that's a nod to our an announcement coming. But yeah, if they want to have a chat with us, then yeah, be happy to talk.
Amazing stuff. And guys, thank you again for joining me. It's been really interesting to learn and hear from the horse's mouth, as it were, about what you're doing. It's fantastic to see such innovative products coming out of Ireland as well, leading the way a lot of the times. I don't think people understand how much innovation and real entrepreneurship it happens in Ireland. And I wish you the very best for the future. And no doubt, I'll be asking for another one in 2 years' time when you're worth 1 billion. You're on the stock exchange.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for joining me. And as I said, hopefully we'll do a round two.
Pleasure. Thank you
thanks,
very much.
Shane. All the best.
Great to be on the show.